All right, everyone, get ready because today we're going deep on a topic that's been getting a lot of attention lately. Autism acceptance.
Mm.
We're past the basics here, right? Our listeners get it, but we want to understand why acceptance is so important, especially for autistic adults. And to help us explore this, we've got this really insightful blog post. It's from Cheap ABA, and it's titled Adult Autism: Why Autism Acceptance is More Important Than Autism Awareness.
Yeah, it's a great piece. It really digs into why all those awareness campaigns, the walks, the puzzle pieces, they kind of fall short.
Totally. I mean, have they actually changed how people see and treat autistic people? I'm not so sure. And you know what? This blog post actually says that awareness without acceptance, it can actually be harmful.
That's the thing. Just knowing about autism, it doesn't mean you understand it, or even more importantly, accept it. And the blog post talks about this, how the media portrays autism in these sensationalized ways, and that just reinforces stereotypes. So it's that kind of awareness, the kind without deeper understanding, that can make things even worse for autistic people.
Okay, so if awareness isn't enough, what does acceptance actually look like then? Can you help me picture it, like in everyday life?
Well, the blog defines acceptance as embracing neurodiversity. It's about seeing autism as a natural part of being human, not something that needs to be cured.
I get that. It's like different kinds of music, right?
Yeah,
Not everyone's into jazz,
right.
but that doesn't mean jazz is bad. It's just different. And like with music, neurodiversity just adds to the human experience.
Exactly. And what's really important about this blog, it focuses on the experience of autistic adults.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. When we think about awareness campaigns, they usually focus on kids. They might be missing the boat when it comes to supporting adults.
Right. And the challenges autistic adults face, they can be really tough. The blog talks about employment, social situations, even getting health care, all areas where understanding and acceptance are so important. Imagine trying to handle a job interview or working in a place that wasn't designed with neurodiversity in mind.
I hadn't thought about that. We take for granted how our surroundings can affect us at work,
Mm,
you know, especially in situations like an interview.
totally. And then there's the social stuff in the workplace too. The unspoken rules, the small talk, all that. It can be hard for anyone.
Mm.
But even harder if you communicate or socialize differently.
So these challenges, they aren't just ideas, are they?
Nope. They can lead to isolation, anxiety, depression. That would impact anyone's well-being.
It's like we're trying to see the world through someone else's eyes,
Yes.
feel it how they feel it, and it shows you. Acceptance isn't just a nice idea. It really impacts people's lives.
Right on. And the blog post actually goes on to list 4 key benefits of autism acceptance. And one that really jumped out at me was inclusion.
Oh, yeah. They talk about moving beyond just surviving to actually thriving. So acceptance means autistic people don't just exist. They have the space to truly flourish and share their talents and perspectives.
Yeah. And that connects with another benefit they mention, understanding. It's about going beyond those surface-level assumptions and actually learning about autism from autistic people themselves.
I can see how that would be a game changer. Instead of telling autistic people what they need or how they should act, we're listening to them and respecting their experiences.
Exactly. And that can lead to self-acceptance too. When society accepts you, it can really boost your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Imagine how it feels to see yourself reflected positively in the world instead of always feeling like you have to hide who you are.
Yeah, to be seen and accepted for who you are, without judgment. That's powerful.
It really is. And lastly, they talk about reducing stigma. Acceptance helps to reframe autism as a difference, not a deficit.
It's amazing how all these benefits, they all connect and build on each other. It's like a ripple effect. When we approach autism with acceptance, it creates so many new possibilities for individuals and society.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind, this blog post is from Cheap ABA. They provide affordable applied behavior analysis therapy. So even therapy organizations are understanding now acceptance is key to supporting autistic people.
Absolutely. And they really drive that point home in their conclusion. They talk about how their mission is to provide ABA that promotes acceptance. So maybe we should touch on ABA a bit. What exactly is it, and how does it connect to this idea of acceptance?
Okay, so without getting too technical, ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. It's about understanding how behavior works and using that knowledge to help people learn new skills and address any challenging behaviors they might have.
And the important thing is, when it's done through the lens of acceptance, ABA isn't about forcing autistic people to fit in
Okay.
or hiding their autistic trait.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to live fulfilling lives on their own terms while respecting their neurodiversity. There are different approaches within ABA, too, like traditional versus naturalistic, and they reflect this shift towards acceptance and individualization.
There's definitely more to ABA than people realize. And I'd love to explore those different approaches more, maybe see how they work in real life.
Me too. Maybe as we move on, we can discuss the practical side of acceptance a little more.
Sounds good to me. So we know that autism acceptance is way more than just awareness. It's about embracing neurodiversity, understanding each other, creating a world where everyone feels included, especially for autistic adults. But how do we make that happen? How do we go from these big ideas to actually changing things?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's like we've climbed this awareness mountain, and now we're standing here looking out at this huge, unexplored land of acceptance.
I like that. A big unexplored land. And I guess a good place to start is with those challenges we talked about. The ones that many autistic adults face,
Huh.
like employment, for example. The blog really highlighted that.
Yeah, definitely. Imagine you're an autistic person going for a job interview or working in a place that wasn't built with neurodiversity in mind. Things like bright lights, open offices, all the noise. That can be super overwhelming if you process sensory information differently.
It's true. It's easy to forget how much our surroundings can affect us, especially in stressful situations like a job interview.
Right. And then there's the whole social side of work. Unspoken rules, small talk, office politics. Anyone can find that tricky. But it can be even harder for someone who communicates or socializes in a different way.
So practically speaking, what would acceptance in the workplace look like? What changes could companies make to be more inclusive?
Well, one thing they could do is offer a more structured interview process. So instead of just doing traditional interviews, which rely a lot on social cues and informal conversation, they could have skills-based assessments or look at work samples. That way, candidates can show what they can do more directly.
That makes a lot of sense. That lets people show their strength, no matter how they communicate or socialize.
Right, and once someone's hired,
They could offer sensory accommodations.
yeah, things like noise-canceling headphones, adjustable lighting, even quiet spaces, those can make a big difference in making the environment more welcoming and accessible.
It's about recognizing that what some people might see as quirks are just different ways of being. And those differences can actually be strengths in the right setting.
Totally. And that's where training comes in. If companies offer neurodiversity training to all employees, it can help create a culture of understanding and acceptance. It's about teaching people about the different ways autistic people might communicate and interact, and how to be respectful of those differences.
It's like building a bridge, isn't it? A bridge of understanding. Instead of expecting everyone to be the same, we're making space for people to be themselves and contribute their unique talents.
You got it. And that idea of making space for different ways of being, it's important for social interactions too.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
even for people who aren't autistic, social situations can be tough. There are all these unwritten rules that can be hard to figure out.
Exactly. Now imagine how much harder it is for someone who might see social cues differently, or who struggles with things like eye contact or small talk.
Okay, so how do we change that? How do we make social interactions more accepting?
I think it starts with awareness, but not just general awareness of autism. It's about being mindful and respectful of the individual you're interacting with. Like, if someone's not making eye contact, it doesn't mean they're being rude. It could be their way of dealing with sensory overload.
It's a good reminder. It's so easy to judge based on our own assumptions about how people should act.
For sure. And if someone takes things literally or needs clear and direct communication, it's our job to adjust how we talk to them.
So it's about flexibility and empathy. Instead of expecting everyone to interact like we do, we try to understand and appreciate their way of being in the world.
You got it. And patience, too. Building trust and understanding takes time, especially in social situations.
Speaking of understanding, the blog post also talked about healthcare. And that seems like a really important area where acceptance can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to explain your needs to a doctor who doesn't really understand autism. It would be so frustrating to feel dismissed or misunderstood, especially when it comes to your health.
It would. Healthcare is stressful enough as it is. You don't want to worry about whether your doctor gets you.
No, you don't. So acceptance in healthcare could mean doctors getting more training on autism, understanding how it shows up differently in adults, knowing about other conditions that often come along with it, and just taking the time to really listen to their patients.
Seeing the whole person, not just a diagnosis.
Exactly, and recognizing that autistic people know themselves best.
Beyond these specific areas, like work, social stuff, healthcare, there's this bigger question of societal acceptance. And I think this is where representation in media really matters.
You're so right. We learn so much about the world from movies, TV, books. They shape how we see things. And if the only autistic characters we see are stereotypes, it just keeps those harmful misconceptions going.
They become the lens we see autistic people through, even if they're not accurate at all.
Exactly. So seeing positive, real portrayals of autistic characters, and ideally, played by autistic actors, that can challenge those stereotypes and help people understand.
It's about showing the diversity of the autistic community, all the different talents, personalities, experiences, creating a world where autistic people see themselves reflected in a positive light.
And that brings us back to self-acceptance, which is so important in all of this. We talked about how societal acceptance can build self-esteem, but there's an inner journey too.
It's about autistic individuals coming to terms with who they are, embracing being neurodivergent, and letting go of the shame that society might have put on them.
It's about understanding that being autistic isn't a bad thing. It's just a different way of being. And it's about celebrating the unique strengths and perspectives that come with that.
That journey of self-acceptance, it's not always easy, is it?
Not always, especially in a world that's so quick to label people.
So how can autistic people find support and community on that journey?
Well, connecting with other autistic people can be really powerful. There are support groups, online communities, even social events just for them. Places where they can share their experiences, find understanding, and feel like they belong.
A space where they can be themselves, without having to mask or pretend.
Yeah, exactly. And those connections can also give them strength when they're facing a world that wasn't built for them.
So we've talked about a lot today, from specific actions to bigger societal changes, but it all comes back to this core idea of acceptance.
It's about seeing autism as a difference to be understood and embraced, not a problem to be fixed.
And it's about creating a world where autistic individuals can live authentically and thrive.
We've touched on the workplace, social interactions, healthcare, even the media. But this journey towards acceptance, it's not always smooth sailing, is it?
You're right, it's not. And that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the bumps in the road and what the future might hold for the neurodiversity movement. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Talking about why acceptance is so important and what it could look like in different parts of life. But as we get deeper into this idea of autism acceptance, I'm realizing it's not always as easy as we might think.
You're right. It's like we've left the marked trails of awareness, and now we're in this more complex, nuanced terrain. There are different paths, different viewpoints, even some disagreements about the best way to move forward.
Like when we talked about therapy and interventions like ABA, I know there are strong feelings and different opinions about that in the autistic community.
Absolutely. Some autistic adults see therapies like ABA as really important. They need them to navigate a world that wasn't made for them. It's a way to develop skills, handle challenges, access opportunities.
But then the others see those same therapies as trying to fix them, like there's something wrong that needs to be changed, making them fit in with societal expectations.
And that tension really highlights something important, something that the blog post doesn't really talk about: respecting the autonomy and choices of autistic individuals.
It's realizing that there's no single approach to autism, right?
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another. What's empowering for one person might feel oppressive to someone else.
Exactly. So we can't go around saying what acceptance should look like or what's best for autistic people. We need to hear from autistic people themselves and listen to their experiences and perspectives.
Let go of the idea that we have all the answers. Be open to learning from autistic individuals about what they need and want.
Exactly. And that includes being thoughtful about the language we use. Like there's this whole discussion about person first versus identity first language. It's important to be aware of that.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Some people prefer person with autism,
Yeah.
while others identify as autistic.
Right. And it's crucial to respect what individuals prefer. Language matters. Using the term someone identifies with shows respect for who they are and what they've been through.
So it's not just about empathy. It's about humility, too. Admitting when we don't know something, asking questions, being open to having our assumptions challenged.
And that goes for the whole neurodiversity movement as well. It's important to remember that it's constantly changing. There are disagreements, different approaches, conversations about the best way to advocate for autistic people.
It's like any movement for social justice,
Yeah.
right? There's going to be some messiness, some debate as the movement grows and learns.
Exactly. And those debates are actually important for growth and progress. They make us examine our assumptions, challenge our own biases, and keep working towards a more inclusive and equitable world.
It's about being willing to have those tough conversations, acknowledge that there are different views within the autistic community, and work together towards a shared goal of acceptance and inclusion.
So as we finish up this deep dive into autism acceptance, I hope our listeners take away a few key things.
First of all, I hope they have a better understanding of why acceptance is so important. It's not just about awareness. It's about seeing neurodiversity as a natural part of being human and valuing the unique contributions of autistic individuals.
And realizing that autistic individuals aren't all the same. They have different experiences, perspectives, and needs. And their voices need to be at the center of any conversation about acceptance.
We can't assume we know what's best for them. We need to listen to them, learn from them, and respect their right to make their own choices.
Absolutely. And this understanding should guide our actions, both as individuals and as a society, to create a more inclusive world.
Whether it's advocating for workplace accommodations, being more thoughtful in our social interactions, or just educating ourselves about autism and neurodiversity, every step towards acceptance counts.
It's a journey, a commitment to keep learning and growing.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on autism, acceptance, and the complexities of the neurodiversity movement. I hope our listeners feel the same way.
It's been great exploring this with you.
You too. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into autism acceptance. We hope it's given you something to think about, some new insights, maybe even some inspiration to take action. Remember, every step towards acceptance matters, no matter how small. So keep learning, keep questioning, keep advocating, and keep working towards a more inclusive and welcoming world for everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.